what we do.
Good evening, and welcome to another Showboys Companion Series, The Bad Batch. I'm your boy, Pixel Nick, and this is your boy, Mikey. That way. Mikey, how you doing tonight?
Doing good, buddy. How you doing?
Pretty good. Outside of the fact that I thought there was only 15 episodes in this season, there's actually a 16th. I'll have to go back and compare my notes and see if I just forgot or they snuck another one in there, because this is the 2 episodes leading up to the finale. There is another episode this week coming up on Friday, so I'm now even more excited than I was before, because I thought they left this on the biggest cliffhanger ever. But here we are. We have another whole episode, so I'm very excited for that. I'm glad you pointed that out. I guess I just assumed there was 15. I feel like that's how it was originally reported, but
yeah,
it's been a long summer.
Yeah, it has. But it's not too because especially like last week's episode, I was like, this is kind of
right,
not bad, but I was like leading up to a finale. I was like, I don't know what role this is gonna play, you know?
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense now how they did that. Because I was like, for a penultimate episode right before the finale, this doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Episode 15 being the one right before the finale makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So that's all straight in my mind. But I still am completely convinced this is a multi-season series. You know, we're probably going to go 4 seasons, I'm thinking, but maybe 3, but there's definitely going to be a second and probably a third, if I were to guess.
I think so too, or at least like you said, multiple. But
yeah, and we'll get into that. So I think let's just rip through episode 13 or 14 here.
I think it's
13.
13 would be the first one we're doing, I think.
Yep.
Today,
yeah. Crap. Well, if this is 13 and 14, man, I'm not paying attention. There's 2 more episodes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because the one I just watched the newest one today, and it was set episode 14. So we have 2 more.
Yeah. So there's gonna be a whole 3 episode arc in here for the finale.
Yeah.
I did not appreciate that. I could have swore like the whole time, like at least how it was announced originally. I'm pretty sure they said it was going to be like 14 episodes, maybe 15, but 16. They're definitely adding them on, I think, at this point. That's
episode 13. Well, it was good. I feel like it just kind of solidified, the questions we had maybe about where they stood with Sid,
right?
Where they actually, so. But yeah, that explains not having a couple more. So
yeah, we got plenty more to do here. I mean, got at least 2 more episodes. This is going long.
Yeah,
can't believe they've done this to us. That's fine. I mean, and it's interesting though, because 16 episodes is a lot more than well, it's not a lot more, but it's a considerable amount, seeing how Clone Wars was 12 episodes, season 7, and then the one before that was only 6 episodes. Though Rebels tended to run a little bit longer, so I think they just kind of do what they feel is right with these animated series.
I'm gonna say, if you were to break really episode 1 into like proper
3
episodes, it'd almost be like a 20 episode.
Yeah, I mean, episode 1 was legit 3 episodes.
Yeah,
90 minutes. Yeah,
it was like it was
easily 3 episodes.
Yeah,
that's crazy, man. My life is just in shock right now. I guess I'm excited though that we get 2 more episodes just sneaking up. I've just been watching along, just along for the ride, not reading ahead, not reading too much as far as like rumors or other kind of like breakdowns on it. So I'm just here. I'm just along for the ride, I guess.
No, I guess it's hard to believe. I guess it is August, but it doesn't seem like we're 3 months in at least.
Well, for the case of what I thought was the penultimate episode, really it's just a filler episode. Episode 13 here, called Infested. I would say overall it was just like a very episode. Like, it was cool and good, but nothing special really about it. And maybe they'll pick up this storyline later, at least the character here, Roland, that they introduced. I'm not sure if he's appeared elsewhere, but the family he's a part of is, at least I've heard of that before and stuff. And obviously a lot of other call outs in this episode, but definitely a filler episode. And this makes so much more sense that we have 2 more episodes after this week to go, because this did not pair up well as a leading up to a finale episode. So this makes a lot of sense. But essentially, and this has kind of been going on what you've kept wondering about as far as like Sid's place in all this. And this episode really kind of like solidifies her as essentially part of the crew, kind of like she's just like a staple at this point. I don't see her after this double crossing them or anything like that. If they did, that would be pretty dirty on her part, and it would have to be a serious situation. I don't think we're going to get that. Right. I think this is kind of this basically this episode caps off their relationship with Sid, and like kind of solidifies it.
Yeah, like I said, kind of, to now they're not, just like every other bounty hunter or anything that she's hired for jobs. And, for them, it was, she's not just the person giving them jobs anymore,
Right.
They have like some comedic stuff, with Wrecker and going back to get the spice, and stuff like that. But, like definitely said, would she sell them out and stuff, kind of wondered as, do you see the Empire spreading and whether they're going to come, or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, I mean, like I said, it was not a bad episode, but like you said, didn't
drive much forward, if anything, except for like little side things and mainly wrapping Sid up for the essentially the season.
I did think like the like kind of, I don't know, like snake looking aliens or whatever, like where they cut his horn off. I thought they were kind of cool. Like
the Pikes.
I didn't take no shit from that. Like,
the Pikes are basically Star Wars's kind of like true kind of like very alien like intelligent life being or like race in the series, because they're basically just like a civilization, just mobsters, gangsters, and they just sling spice all around the galaxy.
That oregano.
They're pretty. I don't know. I don't think it's oregano. I think it's a different color. But yeah, they're a pretty big deal, and they play a part in like Solo, Star Wars story. Loosely, they're mentioned, and then obviously they come up in like Clone Wars and all throughout. So they're a big deal, and they're pretty dangerous. So I guess it makes sense that they make an appearance in this series. Sorry. But we have this character, Roland, and he basically takes over Sid's operation because the bats show up and none of Sid's people are there. It's all these kind of like goony lackeys roaming around, and turns out this Roland guy's in charge. He's taking over Sid's entire operation here. And he just notes that, Sid notes that he's son of a crime boss and a crime family, and he's just trying to make a name for himself. And this is kind of like his claim to fame. And it's kind of a classic kind of like mobster story where like there's, the son or the young one in the family that's setting out to basically make a name for himself, whilst his family is completely successful at doing illegal activities. So he's trying to prove himself. So obviously that draws to the question, where's Sid? And Roland just kind of noted that she was out. So Omega obviously takes on the opinion that they should save her, go find her, make sure she's okay. And, the Bash is kind of like, meh, whatever. Like, maybe we will, maybe we won't. But coincidentally, Sid was on their ship waiting for them. So she obviously was going to them for help in the first place. So she explains the situation, and basically she hatches a plan to basically mess up this spice deal that Roland's trying to pull with the Pikes really early to make a name for himself. And the plan is to basically sneak in through some, back way into the office and steal the spice without anyone knowing. Because if anyone knew, they would be in big trouble. Spoiler alert, they find out anyways. But they go through these like tunnels, which are old mining tunnels for the city, and then they can't wake this hive, this like infestation, which is kind of like, they remind me of Minox from episode or Empire Strikes Back, just like some sort of flying like bat, like not parasite, but like just rodent creature, maybe even a bug. I think they were more rodent bat like. Yeah. I think that's kind of what I gathered from them. I'm not sure. I feel like they did not say their name.
I can't remember either. No, I just noticed once they dropped stuff, made some sound, and they
yeah.
More. I don't recall if they said the name of them either.
Yeah, I would just call them Minox. They're baby Minox on this planet. Now see, like Sid's stressed they have to be quiet because they can't wake them, and like any noise really kind of like pisses them off. They're kind of like moving through these like cable cars by hand to be quiet. Wrecker drops his flashlight. Luckily, it didn't draw the attention of the hive, and they just kind of move through. So, obviously, setting up something for later. And they get to the hatch to go get into the back room of Sid's office where the spice is. And she radios basically the two kind of locals, regulars that hang out at the bar, and basically, she has a plan for them to distract Roland and his goons by stealing Roland's pet, which we saw earlier in the season. Omega made friends with it, and this is basically Roland's very loved pet, Ruby. So they lure away Ruby, and essentially they go off looking for her, drawing everybody out of the cantina, if you will. I'm not sure why everyone had to leave, but enough people did leave, enough to get a lot of the batch to go in there and move the spice out, load it up on the carts, and get going. But these lackeys, they're kind of like the two, kind of once again like a mobster movie or a mobster show. They're kind of, the regulars, just the lackeys that hang about. They're kind of dumb, they're not the brightest. So all they manage to do is get the pet away. And then from there, basically the pet gets the better of them, and they drop the crate. It gets out, makes a noise, then the goons are on them, and Roland is onto them, and they get captured. He gets his pet back. All while like the batch is loading up the spice. Roland gets back, realizes that the spice is gone. The goons like chase them through the cars, but they fire up the engines on these things and make a ton of noise. There's a shootout. They wake the hive. It's a cool little sequence, nothing too crazy. But ultimately, like, I think Tech makes note that they don't like the light, so that kind of helps them, while the goons all get kind of like wiped out by them.
Yeah.
And they're able to narrowly get away, seal the door, because they're kind of in this cavern. So essentially, I mean, they make quick work of that. They lose the spice, though, in that scuffle. And it all kind of falls down into the bottom of the cavern. And, they head back to Sid's place where, well, before that, Roland's kind of ticked, and he's interrogating those two regulars of Sid's. And they basically just kind of completely ratted her out and was like, yep, it was Sid. Like, she put us up to it. They're just kind of like they're just dumb. And, at the same time, the Pikes walk in. And these guys are serious. They're basically like the legit mobsters in this story. And basically they want their spice. He's like, I know who has it. They don't have time for games, blah, blah, blah. The usual run of business there with that story. So as they're lugging out Roland, because obviously he doesn't have the spice, and, it's a bad deal. So they're taking him prisoner. Well, that's when Sid and the batch walk in, because they think that they've won. They ran Roland out because the Pikes took Roland out and his goons because they have spice. But the Pikes now know, because of how that all went down, that here are the people that do know where the spice is. Sid tries to play it off, but Hunter's all like, let's just like relax. Like, we know where it is. And they basically pitch an idea that Hunter isn't a big fan of, and they were like, "You leave the kid with us, and you go get the spice." Ultimately, that's what they do after a little bit of like tuffle, but Sid basically says these are not the people you want to make enemies with. So like we just need to go do this. And the Pike said like if you just get the spice, like we'll consider this resolved, like no further issue. So their whole plan is to take the Marauder, rappel down, get the spice, and get out. More or less that's what they do, but the last like crate up, Sid runs into one of the little rail cars and it falls. And they swarm them. Tech luckily makes like a basically a giant flashbang is how I take it. And he just like throws it down there and disperses them. So for something they kind of built up in the episode is kind of like a throwaway like threat. Like it really wasn't that big of a deal. No one died. No one got hurt. They got the spice. They got in and out. So like really this episode didn't have a lot of reward as far as like any sort of danger. It's just kind of like a little crime story.
I think they just like kind of for that showing like, the batch, just, oh, look, another way, that they, solved this, got this mission over with,
Yeah.
Because like the whole time, Tech's working a little bit. But yeah, like you said, fun scene, the rail cars kind of had like another old Western, kind of like when they did Cad Bane, when he's on. Like you said, like I felt too, I was like, but say story wise, I was like, but
yeah, it's a little bit of a hollow story, and you know, it's just kind of like a filler episode, true and true.
Yeah, notice put Wrecker in more height situations, but he doesn't complain as much anymore.
Yeah, he got over it. He stopped complaining about it. I mean, he makes a little like when he's looking down the paddleboard. He's like, he wasn't a fan of it, but he's getting better about that for sure.
Yeah.
But while they're doing that, Roland and Omega are kind of like, they're hanging back with the Pikes because they're just kind of captured. And I don't know, Roland's kind of like, he's just kind of like a chill guy. He's just kind of that story once again where he's just trying to set out and do what the family does and, make a name for himself. But really, he's just kind of like a putz kind of. He just has his pet. He's like a super nice guy. Like, he kind of opens up to Omega and he's like, it's just what my family does and stuff. So like, he's not really that tough of a character really. And like Omega's obviously very in tune with people and she's able to talk to them. So another one of these scenes where Omega's kind of leveling with someone, just kind of making them seem less bad.
Yeah.
And so they return the spice to the Pikes. The Pikes kind of say like, yep, cool, we're good here. Leave it at that, except for you, Roland, because you're kind of a douche here and you caused the problem in the first place. We're going to punish you. And what seems like, they're acting like they're going to kill him. They end up just really cutting off one of his horns, which is pretty bad. It's kind of like the equivalent to probably like ripping off someone's thumb, fingernails from like a mobster movie or something. Yeah. So I thought that was cool. They cut his horn off and he doesn't have that. And obviously that's one of his trademarks, the dual horns, which made me think, I was like, he does now reminds me of a character and I'm going to have to look and see if he shows up anywhere else in Star Wars. Not really sure, but that episode was super concise, super short, didn't have a lot in it. Couple callbacks, there's probably some more like Easter eggs in there, but nothing too crazy, and especially as it pertains to like what's going on right now. I could see them opening that up, just setting the stage a little bit for like the Pikes and just getting more into like the criminal underground in this period of time, but overall nothing too crazy out of that episode, and really was one of the most filler episodes probably of the whole season, just because everyone's character at this point is pretty well developed throughout the season. Like, we know who Omega is. Wrecker's been through his stuff. Hunter's kind of come back around. So, basically all it did was just move forward a little bit.
Yeah.
Their relationship with Sid, like technically she kind of owes them now. And if anything, they're kind of more partners or very even at this point.
Yeah. And kind of just like, too, like at the beginning, right? They're like, oh, we don't really have many friends to go to, and whether it's them or Omega, kind of, another connection was made. But like you said, then, but nothing, it didn't feel like, story, overall, but not a bad episode.
No, definitely filler. Not a bad one, not a great one. It also didn't lend its, and also where this show and these type of shows do hurt a little bit is when they're in these settings that don't really show off the animation capabilities. There wasn't, they're inside rooms, they were in the hangar, and they were in like the caves. Not a lot of opportunity to show like how good the animation style is. In contrast to episode 14, War-Mantle.
I was about to say 14 made up for it though.
Yeah, this episode is absolutely beautiful. If there's just something about when they bring out like trees, forested environments, like more lush green, colorful environments. It was just set at a very big scale, and the animation just looks so good in this episode. And that's like one of the big things. And I think, now knowing that there's 2 more episodes after this one, we are seeing a 3-episode arc for the finale here. And they're all going to have this movie level quality to them, which is really exciting. And also this episode has a ton of callback and nostalgia to the original Star Wars movie, A New Hope. And just like it, whether it's the music, it's the setting, the scene, a lot of the characters, like this is setting all that up. And it just hits really hard on that whole feel. Even like I would say the original trilogy, because this is kind of like an Endor-like planet. Like we get the trees and kind of like it's a mix of a lot of things. And I really like this episode.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. I was like, because I like Return of the Jedi probably the best.
Yeah,
I was like, nice visual. That's not to jump ahead, but like when they're riding the elevator and stuff, especially. Yep. But yeah, I thought so too. I was like, oh, this is very like Star Wars music, sound effect heavy.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of nostalgia in this episode, but this is where the season here is definitely getting into plot points that were set up in episode 1. We're all the way back to War-Mantle, which is the name of the episode, which is also the project that Rampart is in charge of, and basically it's the matter of replacing the clones with stormtroopers. In theory, I mean, obviously it was like the evaluation, but we all know the Empire has ultimately their mind made up already many episodes ago, if not the first episode of the season. They knew what they were going to do. But that's that. But like this episode starts off with we get a clone being hunted, right? Chased through the forest first by what seems to be like these 2 like dog-like creatures that's hunting them. And you just think he's escaping, but then quickly you see like the stun blasts come, and you're like, okay, do these things shoot like stun ray at people? But then you find out that he gets chased down and he falls ultimately, and you see the boots of other clone troopers. So you're like, this is interesting. You have clones hunting a runaway clone. It was safe. I was like, he's probably just like defecting. He's trying to run away from something, which is pretty accurate. But that's basically how it pans out. But it makes a lot of questions right off the get-go of the episode. It's like, where is this? Yeah. What's going on? Who is this? So that was a really good opening scene. And plus, like the kind of like nighttime with, the different lighting effects, like it was a really good looking scene. So, right off the gate, like episode 14 here is just really clean, really good.
Yeah.
And it started, and it felt like a finale. Obviously, because it's part 1 of 3 now of the final 3 episodes. So they were right on point there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that opening scene, like it felt very much like, your classic, say like Fugitive movie, opening scene with the dogs and stuff. So I think too, like, like you said, set it up knowing like where clones stand now, right?
Right.
Then the more gray area, they're wanted fugitives.
Yeah.
Vicious German shepherds. Star Wars,
the Germans chasing down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They got the canine unit out.
They do, and yeah, the Empire rocks canine units, hunting down these defectors, these deserters.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm in the clone though. Before getting captured, he dropped like a little beacon. I thought it was a grenade at first, but it didn't blow up. So
that's what I thought too.
Yeah. So quickly, I was like, okay. Quickly, we learned it was a beacon. Because we jumped to the batch. They're on their way back from a mission for Sid. So obviously, probably a little bit of time has gone. Like not a lot, but like they're just doing another mission for Sid. Nowhere near where they were at the last episode. Just setting things time of frame here. And they get a call from Rex, and Rex seems to be in a hurry. He's kind of cloaked. He's like kind of hiding. He's busy, but he's just saying, "Hey, I got this distress signal from a clone that I know. He needs rescued. I don't have time to talk. Got to go." Hunter and Tech are not really about it because they're like, "We're on a mission for Sid. If we don't get back, we won't get paid, etc., etc." They're basically saying they're arguing to not help out here. Omega kind of lately, her whole preaching situation is we should help everyone. It's kind of odd that her character has taken like a very default status to everything the past few episodes, where it's just like we just have to help everybody. It's not necessarily, her character arc once again, like everyone else, is settled. Like not really anything's being developed at this point. And then like there's a little bit of comedy here where Hunter makes a point. Brecker's like, "Oh yeah, good point." Omega makes a point. He's like, "Oh, that's a good point too." Then Tech, and then like Echo, it bounced around, and ultimately, Hunter was like, "We'll check it out." Kind of like the Ryloff situation with Hera. We'll check it out. No promises. We'll just see what's going on. And Tech explains that the distress signal comes from a CC 5576, and CC is obviously the 5576. This is designation number. The CC stands for Clone Commando, whereas most clone troopers are CTs, which is short for clone trooper. So we know this is a commando that we're going after, and it's on the planet Darrow. And it's an outer rim world, no known settlements. These are all just like little bits of information they're giving away here at the beginning. Just building up to the ultimate surprise very early on here. But before that, we jump back to Camino, and basically we see Rampart and Crosshair just basically saying like everything's going along as planned. We're ahead of schedule. Basically, it looks like everyone's packing up and leaving. We later get a little bit of dialogue from some younger clones talking to Lama Se. And basically she's explaining that they're all leaving Camino, they're leaving the facility, and it's kind of like the Empire is packing up shop. And Crosshair's kind of like, well, what about the Caminoans? And Rampart's like, we have our orders, so like, keep an eye on them. Something really shady is going on here on Camino. And Lamasu, the prime minister, he pulls Nala Se aside, and he's like, the Empire canceled our contracts. Doesn't look too good. She kind of makes the case like, someone else in the galaxy will give us work. Probably not at this point, because the prime minister basically is like, we basically enabled the Empire to our own detriment. Like we basically cloned our ways out of job here. He's like, to ensure our survival, we need to get off the planet. I'll arrange for transport. You round up the essential people, and we'll get out of here. Seems to be pretty straightforward. But that's all we get there. So we know things are going on in Camino. So we got a little parallel stories going here. And so back on like Daros, this is just a really beautiful planet, because like they touch down and they start tracking. They touch down very close to the beacon. They find the beacon. Then Hunter kind of goes into like Rambo Witcher mode, and he's like tracking this clone. He saw, or Aragon even from Lord of the Rings, like he was dragged. Call back to that scene. and it's just a really good looking planet. And it has these like mountains that are kind of like mesas. They remind me of like the Southwest, where they like giant mesas that rise above the ground, but they just call them mountains in this. And they hunt them. They basically get to the base of this mountain, and Hunter basically perceives through his senses that there is something inside of this mountain. And Tech confirms that. He's like, yeah, my sensors are jammed. At this point, Hunter tells Wrecker and Omega to go back to the ship. They're going to be back up, and Hunter, Tech, and Echo are going to go scale this mountain and see what's inside of it. They noted that like a shuttle landed where they were at the base of the mountain, basically finding the end of the trail here for this clone. So basically the shuttle came and picked them up and took them back into the mountain. So they scale this mountain, they run it up, and they get to the basically kind of the top, and inside, bored out of the mountain, is this Imperial base that has some shuttles coming in and out of it. So essentially, this is a hidden base inside the mountain, and Tech just kind of says how, with the way the mountain is, it perfectly hides this base. And it's really weird because this was supposed to be a planet with nothing on it, and here we have an entire Imperial base. And they go and take a closer look, and they notice there's clone commandos and then these other upgraded armor typed troopers kind of running around. And basically they quickly realize this isn't going to be a normal kind of like rescue mission. Like they're either going to go into this giant base and try and find this clone, or they can just leave because it's kind of in over their head. At least that's how they poise it at first. But Echo makes the strong case, is like, you guys did the same thing for me when you rescued me. He's like, I would still probably be there and captured. So if there's even a chance that we can rescue a clone that needs help because he's being held against his will, we should do it. Good argument, Echo, because this was basically exactly what happened to Echo. Similar situation, and the batch rescued him, and now he's part of the batch. So, but like Rex, or Hunter was kind of saying how, like, we'll just report back to Rex and kind of see where we go from here. But Echo basically convinces them that they seem to go forward with this. And this is where we get that like New Hope kind of like sneaking around the Death Star scene. So, they're sneaking around this Imperial facility. So it just reminded me a lot of A New Hope. A lot of the sounds, all that is just very staple. And, we got 3 people sneaking around an Imperial base, which is basically what happened in A New Hope. So you just really, it's just feeling very Imperial-ish at this point. Just like lots of patrolling squads and stuff. And they basically, they're kind of dodging, the squads, and Hunter's kind of observing them, right? He notices that like the commando uses like a special key card to get access to things. And Tech and Echo, Echo's kind of access the main database so they can find out where this clone trooper is. And Echo notes that it's odd that the like roster, right, for the base is 50 clone commandos and then 1,000 TK troopers. And Tech kind of knows. He's like, I'm not familiar with like the TK designation. So like we're getting a little bit of hint here, right? But like TK, that's also callback. That was first seen in A New Hope, because what's your TK number? And like Han Solo does shoots the comm. So that's basically the designation for stormtroopers. They all have TK numbers. So we're further set up here for the Empire and just getting closer to what we're familiar with in like A New Hope and Rebels and things like that. So they spot his holding cell. He was nearby, and they come up on this clone being held captive. And they ask, like, are you CC 5576? And he's like, yeah, it depends on who's asking, kind of response. And they're like, oh, Rex sent us. He's like, oh, in that case, I'm Gregor. And already in his speech pattern, for anyone that has seen Rebels, in one episode in Clone Wars, Gregor, he's seen in his Clone Commando armor in Clone Wars in season 5, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's season 5. And then he's one of Rex's companions in Rebels. So basically, this is like the introduction to Gregor as we know him post Clone Wars. And he has this kind of like speech, like stutter or something. Like he kind of like excited. It's weird. He has definitely a unique way of talking. Maybe even a little crazy. Like he's a little off his rocker a little bit. But I don't know if you're familiar with Gregor at all or anything, but he's definitely a unique character that, they felt the need to call back and kind of place him, because in Clone Wars, he was last seen blowing up in like an explosion, but then he shows up in Rebels. So I think they're just trying to tie that along and explain things.
Yes. I did look and see that he was, because I had a feeling that he was a callback character, but I didn't look into his, story or anything. So I do plan on going and watching it all eventually.
Eventually, there's a lot.
Yeah, when I can watch a decent chunk at a time.
Yeah, there's a lot, and there's a lot of filler in Clone Wars too. You could almost just go, at this point, you could just go back and just watch specific episodes to like fill in your knowledge, or just watch it all. That's also fun. So they're escaping, and Gregor basically in this escape sequence right before like the chase starts, we just get a lot of little detail here as far as what's going on here. Gregor notes that the armor that they have, he's like, you guys must be CCs like me, and Hunter's like, no, we're CT-99. So he's like, oh, defective. He's like, if you ask me, the ones that are really defective are the ones that want to stay in this place, in this base. So kind of hinting at like why he originally was trying to escape and defect. And I will note that the helmets, like the costume design of the stormtroopers essentially is the original, very similar to the original concept art that for stormtroopers like back in 1979 or so. That's where they use that design from. It's like that's like a callback to the original concept art for a stormtrooper before it became what we saw in the movie. So that was a fun little thing they did. But Tech notes. So they set off the alarm because Tech went to use like a clone code in the console, and it sets off the alarm because clone codes don't work according to Gregor. Which makes sense because they don't want any clones doing anything they're not supposed to in this base, because it is becoming an Imperial base, and clones are kind of losing their rank, if you will, with the Empire. So it sets off the alarm. A squad here comes up on them. They take care of them pretty easily. There's a little bit tougher of a fight with the clone commando, because these are actually trained and skilled clone troopers. Like the most trained and skilled are the clone commandos, so we can expect them to put up a little bit more of a fight than these stormtroopers. Tech takes off one of the helmets of the knocked out troopers and knows like, oh, these aren't clones, and Gregor's like, that's what I've been trying to tell you, these are replacements. And like through all this dialogue, we find out that Gregor was there with the other clone commandos as a instructor to train the new troops, right, to replace the clones. And basically through that experience, he was like, I need out of here. Like this isn't cool. So they're kind of running through the facility, and basically we're getting to see how disposable these new troopers are, because they're just taking them out left and right. The clone commandos put up more of a fight, but they are just mowing down these regular troopers. They're just stunning them, but they are taking them out pretty easily. And that's where Gregor explains that these troopers come from all of the galaxy. They swear loyalty to the Empire, and they are essentially very plentiful. He said an endless supply of them, right? So these are the counters to clones. Clones are slow to grow and create and train, where these recruits, the Empire just says, hey, want to join? They join up, basically enlisted soldiers. So this meets more of the Empire's MO versus very highly skilled, expensive clone troopers.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of interesting dialogue through here where Hunter's like, "Oh, I thought you said you trained these guys." He's like, "Oh, I didn't teach them everything because they kind of suck." But there's a bit there where that commando does that sweet maneuver where he like runs outside, runs across the elevator, and like flanks them and shoots Gregor. So that's just kind of showing like how tough the commandos are, in contrast to these very poorly trained stormtroopers now. So I thought that was cool that they spent some time there just kind of showing how that all went down, and just building up the fact that clone troopers or stormtroopers just they're bad shots, they're not well trained, they're just kind of like anyone in and off the street that wants to get paid, and they'll be loyal to the Empire. Doesn't seem like a good job. Clone trooper never seemed like a good gig.
No, not at all.
Yeah. So they catch their breath. They're kind of like in a control room, and essentially they're locked out from getting to that inner ring to escape. So Tech's basically like, oh, we can go out through this like exhaust vent. But Gregor knows that it's way up the mountain and they can't make that jump. But he's like, well, this is where we'll have the rest of our squad pick us up. And thank goodness Hunter sent them back to be the backup, because they need backup this time.
Yeah.
And they need specifically a lift off of a very high point on the mountain. And this is where it kind of like really picks up like even more with kind of like the callbacks, because they get to the top there and it's kind of like a sheer rock face. They're being chased. And that's a little bit of like kind of like when Luke and Leia swing across the chasm kind of thing. It's like more of those little elements of just being, chased through the facility. And then the Marauder takes off. Wrecker and Omega. Omega was very concerned that they were just kind of hanging around and not doing anything. Wrecker was relaxing. He was like, I'm getting ready. Which, that's how he gets ready. He just kind of completely relaxes. And then when it's time, he jumps in. So Omega flies the ship up to like kind of pick them up, but then we see basically gunships, shuttles, and V-wings taking off. And V-wings are essentially the precursor to the TIE fighters, but they have very similar noises. The black, the fire they shoot, it just sounds like TIE fighters. So you get this sequence of this like dogfighting in the Marauder versus these TIE fighters, which is really cool. And everything's kind of gray like the Empire is, so further and further just solidifying the Empire here. They're fully taking form. But they're able, who was it? It was Tech and Gregor were able to make it aboard the Marauder. They do a bunch of maneuvers and they shoot down a bunch of these V-wings, but then they go back to pick up Echo and Hunter, who have been fighting off these troopers coming down the hallway. Echo makes it on. Hunter makes it on, but then falls because they have to do a crazy maneuver with the ship to not get blown up. Hunter takes a very hard fall, like very far. I think some trees broke his fall and then like a ledge, and ultimately just lands very hard, kind of somewhere down the mountain. Meanwhile, the Marauders getting tore up pretty good. And basically Tech's like, we're not going to be able to take much more. Hunter, a bunch of gunships land around him. He's basically surrounded. And he orders them to leave. Omega, complains and says that they need to stay. They need to help Hunter. But like, and Tech even knows like there's not very high probability of you escaping. He's like, I know, but you guys got to go. I got to stay. Hunter surrenders. The Marauder makes it off the planet and jumps to hyperspace. Hunter's captured, which is pretty crazy. I think we always kind of were thinking like Omega would be the one that gets captured, and that definitely I didn't see happening. But I do like the fact that it is Hunter that got captured, and the batch is kind of off there on their own without the leader necessarily. So it'd be interesting to see how the leadership takes form. I wonder if Rex will lead that up, or like, who's going to be the figurehead? Are they going to listen to Omega? Is it going to be Tech? I don't know. But we get two final scenes here after Hunter is captured. Back on Kamino, Rampart confronts Lamassu, the prime minister, about trying to escape Kamino. He's like, I can't believe you'd do this to me, even though they were probably going to kill them anyways. But he's just kind of playing it up like Rampart does. He's a slimy guy. But there's just some dialogue where everyone's surprised, fake surprise that like, oh, the Kaminoans were leaving. No, they weren't. I didn't know that. But Rampart basically gets to the point where he's like, I have use for scientists. I don't have use for politicians like you. He leaves two of Crosshair's people with him. The door closes. I assume they just killed him because he's like, I have no use for you. And that's effectively, I think, the end of like the Kaminoans as an organization. At this point, the Empire just cleaned house there. There is no Kamino. They bailed on that place. They killed the leaders. They took the scientists. That was the dark end there to the Kaminoans, which there's other things I think they could have done. Like lore wise, like that's been played off as like a more dramatic event, but the Empire is pretty clean and efficient. So it looks like they just kind of snuffed them out pretty easily there. And then in the final scene here, Hunter's in the cell, in the base. Crosshair shows up. He's like, I was hoping it would be the whole group, but you'll do just fine. And then that's the end of the episode. So I don't know if Crosshair's going to torture him or what he's going to do to him.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, we'll probably figure it out next episode exactly what happened to the Kaminoans. Like, is Kamino done completely? Yeah. Just basically some dialogue to confirm that. And then there's this whole situation where Crosshair has caught up with Hunter.
Because we do see her, too, with the little clones. Taking them. When he's like, we're still going to be soldiers, though, right?
Right, yeah. Yeah, of course you are.
And he's like, okay.
But the Empire probably just like jettisons them into space, and like, I mean, I'll see why the Empire would keep them around. I don't know.
Yeah, that's I don't know.
But all my thoughts kind of like construed here because I thought it was the finale. It worked out as a finale. That could have been a finale, and then just wait till next season.
Cliffhanger.
Yeah, a big cliffhanger, but it's not. There's 2 more episodes, but they're not going to wrap up the entire story by the end of 2 more episodes from now. So there's going to be another season. I'm very convinced of that. War-Mantle, that whole story arc has kind of come full circle, more or less, like in a very non-dramatic way, without spending too much time. The Empire just ended it. Like they're recruiting secretly. They snuffed out the Kaminoans. Clones are still obviously a big part of the Empire, so that'll probably be something that gets developed through season 2, as far as completely replacing the clones. That'll probably be a big part of season 2. But what that does do, that I just realized, is that almost completely, actually no, it completely removes one of Omega's story arcs, was her getting recaptured by the Kaminoans so they can finish their phase 3 cloning program. That's not a thing anymore, unless the scientists, the Kaminoan scientists, are like, hey, we can do this cool stuff, but we need this clone. That could be resurrected there. And then the only other way for Omega to go story arc wise right now is in this direction of like Boba Fett, Fennec Shand, and that whole kind of arc. But right now, she just kind of got a big loose end there tied up for her. Like the Empire doesn't know about her yet. The Kaminoans that did want her are subdued or gone. That was the prime minister wanting her. So that's kind of gives her a clean slate. Like where she could kind of go. She's not hindered by the storyline anymore. So that's interesting that's all kind of like tied up.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe just kind of, if not the batch, like you said, then who? So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously they're going to, well, there's 2 more episodes. So they're going to try to rescue Hunter.
Yeah.
Crosshair's going to use Hunter as bait. And like, what's Hunter's like, or Crosshair's like whole goal here is just simply revenge or some sort of triumphant defeat of his former squad mates. Because other than that, like, other than the batch being a problem to the Empire, it's just really all about Crosshair's agenda here. Like, what's Crosshair's goal?
Yeah.
In having all of them in one room for him to torture or kill. Like, what's on his mind? I really don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to be some sort of like flip right there where he kind of is like, yeah, this sucks. We need to get out of here. Empire, screw them. Like, and Crosshair like kills Rampart. I don't know, but it's interesting. I think that I'm very interested to see how that plays out because Crosshair very easily now has caught up with Hunter and wants the rest of the batch. So he has some motive. It's not entirely clear. Like, is it just straight up he just wants to kill them, or what is it? That's my big question. Other than that, like, I mean, it's a pretty tied up story wise. Obviously I think like Rex has a lot of opportunity to come back because they rescued Gregor for Rex. So Rex is definitely a heavily returning character and his story arc ties in well here. So probably see Rex show up in the next episode or 2, and that's where, I mean, it could bring in Ahsoka potentially.
I was just saying, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe like you said, who's going to be the leader if they do end up with Rex or some of the people that they've helped out now along the show, kind of pitching, helping out in whatever ways, to have some plan to go get Hunter.
Yeah, they're gonna need to team. They're gonna have to meet up with 1 or 2 other people who have a plan and like have an agenda that they can attach the whole save Hunter thing to. So either like Rex and like Ahsoka are along, and they're like, yeah, we'll totally help you save them and like figure out what the Empire is up to here. Or I think this is less likely, but like Saw Gerrera, he hates the Empire, and if there's like if there's a secret base that the Empire has, Saw Gerrera probably wants to blow it up. So he would be a good option for a little bit of destruction in a finale. Yeah, I mean, they're doing a good job at keeping it not entirely predictable, but still kind of like on a very sensible path. So I've definitely enjoyed that about the show. And I'm even, once again, I'm still pretty impressed that this could have been a finale, but it's not. So yeah, overall, I mean, very good episode. Like we said earlier, like it's beautiful looking. The sounds and like the sequences are all on point. This is a very good episode. Definitely showing the best that the series has to offer. Reminded me a lot of like the first episode, right, where they're on that planet and Kanan escapes and stuff like that. Just very cinematic, very good looking. So
I
don't know. Not too much other than that I can think of. It's definitely narrow. It's clean. There's not a ton of loose ends, and that's kind of the nature of like the show. They set it up to be that way. I think at the beginning there was lots of things going on, but now like it's getting more and more focused. So I have a feeling that this is going to end naturally to kind of blow open maybe 2 or 3 more storylines with how this ends to go into the next season. Because otherwise, the whole Omega thing, like I said, is pretty simplified at this point, and really nothing, a lot of driving force. So those scientists would have to like tell the Empire that like, hey, we need Omega, so that would resurge that, or Boba Fett tries to find her in season 2.
Yeah.
The batch ultimately is getting, the clones are getting replaced. So Rex is obviously probably trying to save as many clones as possible from the Empire. So I think the batch is probably going to drift more toward helping Rex out. Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be maybe a little disappointed if they spent like a whole nother season kind of just doing jobs for Sid half the time. So I feel like that has to evolve and mature a little bit as well to kind of keep it going. But I mean, overall, I mean, I'm really liking it, but it definitely, as they draw to an end here, I see need for improvement, or definitely where they need to add stories to make sure everything has a go forward point. So
yeah, I can't wait, honestly. Like I said, once we figure out there's 2 more episodes, I can't wait to see how
I know
they wrap it up. But I definitely would see too that there will be more beyond it. So if they keep doing it like this, I mean, I don't see why not. So
yeah, it's definitely gonna be a 3-4 season thing. But yeah, I mean, those are pretty clean. That's all I have. Anything else anything you kind of like saw or thought of?
I think we touched on most of it, honestly. Like I said, I mean, the one was pretty, cut and dry.
Yeah, that was.
And then, kind of like the pattern, and then we got some big answers, and then, like you said, a good cliffhanger. Finally, got them back face to face. Crosshair and Hunter.
Right.
So.
Yeah. That's the big one. Is like, what's Crosshair up to? Because we had a lot of speculation on Crosshair as far as how that all would go down, and it's gone down completely differently.
Yeah.
Right. We thought they were going to get Omega, but here he has Hunter, and what's his agenda? That's the biggest question I have right now. What is Crosshair's agenda? He's an elusive one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he's working like both sides here, or he's just, if he's not working both sides, I don't know. There's not a lot of depth there. Like, why would his only purpose be to just kill them? So I feel like there's got to be another layer to Crosshair.
The only thing I could think of, like, for him to turn on the Empire is if they are going to get rid of clones, and he knows now that he can think free enough that like they will get rid of him eventually.
Yeah.
So hey, actually maybe tries to get out with Hunter, but I don't know, honestly.
Yeah, maybe him and Hunter will have a big heart to heart, and it'll all be okay.
Yeah, I don't know. But I'm definitely interested, ready to, looking forward to these next 2 episodes.
Yeah, 100%.
It's going to be sweet.
Well, I think that's all we have. Thanks for tuning in, and to our surprise, as well as yours, maybe not, there are 2 more episodes. So we will be here next Sunday and the Sunday after, and we're going to walk this little series home. But until next time, we do what we do, and have a good night.
Peace.